AODA compliant, and I believe this has a rubber surface as well. So this is, when putting playgrounds in now to code, this is basically what it costs for playground equipment.
Is that mandatory? Is that mandatory, or can we phase that?
I believe, I don't know how we could phase it, because you have to have, you know, the ground goes in, the equipment on top of it. Shelley has just mentioned there is a grant application as well for this particular playground.
How much?
50,000, I believe, Shelley? Take over if you want to.
Through the Mayor, the county submitted an Enabling Accessibility Fund grant last fall for this particular project, and the maximum amount for the grant funding is $50,000, and we hope to hear early in the new year if we are successful with that grant application. As Council will recall, we have been very successful in EAF grant fundings in the past on several occasions for different projects that have gone forward.
So that would, you're saying 50 grand would come off that 175?
That's our understanding, yes.
And I ask my question again, is it mandatory that we provide whatever the company you said, what was the terminology you used?
Through the chair, yes, AODA compliant. Anything we build new has to be up to that spec.
But if we don't upgrade it, we don't have to do it.
That's correct. If there's no upgrade, that is correct.
And we're not going to jail?
No, sir. Not if you don't upgrade.
Okay. What's that?
Todd has just mentioned that as we go through our playground replacement, there's equipment in this park that some have been removed that are deemed not safe. So
Okay.
That's why it's up for replacement. And then when you replace, you bring in today's compliance issues, and this is what it costs to replace a playground.
Could some of the equipment not be replaced? Could it be phased?
Mr. Shoemaker, can you shed some light here?
To your worship. Yes, what this is going to be completely 100% accessible, this piece of playground equipment. AODA says we have to supply accessible playgrounds. Not every single playground has to be accessible, but you have to supply an accessible playground where all people are able to go and enjoy the outdoors. What we do is now we're putting one unit in a playground area that is accessible, but it's not fair. I mean, we should be able to make a piece of equipment totally accessible for everybody to be able to go there, and that's what we're doing with this particular piece. This is 100% accessible, rubber protective surfacing, so they can get out there with their wheelchairs, they can get on the actual piece of equipment with their wheelchair if that's what they have, or walkers or whatever, they can get out and enjoy it. And so we're trying to put one of these in all the areas. So this is the first area we're going into, and that's why we're working with Shelby on getting all the AODA compliance and getting these pieces of equipment in. Unfortunately, they are expensive to put in because they have to be on a larger scale.
Okay, my question is,
What is there is currently not safe. We would have to take out what's there it's over 20 years old, and through our inspection process, it's not safe. That's why this park was deemed the one to move forward on.
okay, my question is though, like, there's different pieces of equipment going on this rubberized surface, correct?
It's all interlinked, so you can't put it in. Once you dig your surface, you can't add different sections of rubber because the rubber is poured in place. So you can't continually add. It's better if you put it in all at once.
The equipment also that I don't know, their bikes they ride on or swings they swing on. All I'm saying is, can you put that in phasing?
Swing sets you can, yes.
So
The climbing apparatus we're looking at, it would be one piece. Swing sets would be another piece because they cannot be in the same safety zone as the other pieces of equipment. So they would be put in at another time.
okay, so that's my question. Could
Yes.
that 175 with the change in phasing of some of the actual equipment, like you said, the swings, could it be reduced somewhat to,
This particular, the 175, doesn't include a swing set.
what's it include
It
besides?
includes the climbing apparatus
Right,
that is totally 100% accessible for everybody.
and that's it.
That's it. Slide, climbers. So
No riding horses or nothing like that?
can't go in the same area. There's no encroachment zones. They can't cross over. They can't be in the same area. It's,
Okay. My next question, if I may, on the same line under there, tower replacement, Delhi Parks, is that the one park by the arena? Are the lights are, all the towers bad?
Yeah, through the chair, this was an item that was in last year's as well and was pushed out or deferred. And I'm trying to think here, one of the windstorms last fall, one of the towers did come down on us.
Oh.
We do have a report from an engineering group that does recommend replacement of all the steel stands at that point. So we're recommending that this one moves ahead. We did have one come down last year in a storm.
Okay. And the last one I have on there is, or I missed it, was the Langton floor replacement in the arena. That's not the main floor you're talking about, I assume?
No, this again was one I believe was in last year and was pushed or deferred out to this year. It is the upstairs above the
canteen.
main, yeah, it's nothing to do with the ice surface, it's a floor surface in the upstairs.
Thank you.
Is there anything else, gentlemen, on the Parks, Facilities, Recreation section? I'm not going to go any further in that at the moment, because we will be having a short break. I see Geisens in black.
Through the chair. Almost, you still need a staff member to push it along, but it adds the liquids, brushes, and cleans up. It saves the old days and much quicker and does a better job. No, my understanding is not like one of the commercials you see where it runs around by itself. You have to have a staff member with it.
Councillor Black?
Well, I appreciate the explanation on the electric ice resurfacer. I was going to ask that question. That sounds good. The Talbot Garden seating repairs, about the middle of the page there for $95,000. Wondered if Bill or Todd could explain, like, what has been done there, exactly what this includes, and if we should be deferring or waiting for this. And is this phase two the west end?
Through the chair, Councillor Black is 100% correct. What staff did earlier this year during the summer was almost a half of the arena, the east end, we were able to blow a pea stone in under the structures to fill the gap. Then we cored holes. Yeah, the concrete was already cut, so we filled the gap up underneath the bleachers. And then we cored holes in the seating, filled them full of grout. So and we did shore some with post and beams. So we got our engineer to sign off that he was very pleased with what we did and things were safe. So presently now we have the west end, which is closed, still closed off. This $95,000 would enable staff to come back in, do the same process, and open the west end of the arena up. So you'll be back to full capacity, with the exception of the very west end, because we've got a header trench that has some issues, and it'll just be the last, the end bleachers we will not be able to shore up or pack, but it will give you almost full capacity. So it's the same thing we did this summer, but at the other end, and to get rid of the little barriers, we haven't opened things up at Talbot.
And the portion that you mentioned that you're not going to do is there's piping or something, ammonia pipes, or is that what the problem is?
Through the chair, there's a header trench for the ice surface which runs north-south there, and there's just no way to fill that in. That has to remain open, so we can't secure those bleachers. But again, if you look at it, I think it is only the last 2 or 3 at the very end, very minor.
I think it's the northwest corner, right? Wouldn't it be?
You're correct.
That's it. Thank you.
Councillor Brunton?
Well, I'm going to try a recommendation here, and that would be, and I've looked this over, I've been in the facility, the item 1 there, the customer service desk upgrades. I'm going to make a recommendation that we remove that for now.
Motion to remove the $20,000 customer service desk upgrade to the rec center. I have a mover. Do I have a seconder? Put it on the floor. Sonnenberg has seconded. Discussion. Pardon? Did you say, I thought you said remove, or did you say defer?
Oh, well, defer, whatever you want.
Oh, no, it's up to you.
Well, let's defer it for now. Let's
A
defer.
motion to defer this 1 year, and I have a seconder, which is Councillor Wells, or I believe it was Sonnenberg, sorry. Discussion? Wells?
Have staff explain exactly what it is that they are asking for this money, just before we vote, so we know.
Nikki, do you want to give us the explanation again, please? But you want to hear it again, and that's in order? Yes.
We're spending $20,000, I think we should be able to ask a question.
Yes, no problem.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify the customer service area, when the original design of the renovations happened at the rec center, the customer service desk was actually slotted for where the aquatic supervisor office is. Why it got moved, I don't know. We weren't included in those decisions. I mean, the people that were involved in that are no longer with our department, so I'm not sure what happened or why. But the customer service area that was designed is not ergonomically correct. It doesn't meet the needs of the customers or the staffing. It's starting to fall apart. There's parts of if you actually take a look over at it, there's pieces of the desking area that are actually starting to come apart and fall off and attach to people's clothing, and it's becoming a hazard for that as well. But the majority of the problem is that it really isn't ergonomically, it's not really AODA. There's parts of the desks that, yes, are lower, but they make it really hard for working, as well as discussing things with patrons. There's a lot or I guess I should say there's more efficiency that could be done if we had the ability to make some changes to that area. We are limited in the changes we can make because of the gating that goes around to secure it at the end of the night. But if we are able to make some adjustments to what is currently there, it would be very helpful and it would really make a difference to the patrons.
Okay, Councillor Black, then Height.
Thank you. Well, it is very bothersome to know that that area is really not that old and that it wasn't designed properly, and here we are having to spend another $20,000. I mean, oh my goodness. It's hard enough already to spend the 20, but when somebody says that it's not designed right, it's like, who do we hold to account for that? It's bothering me, that's for sure. Thank you.
Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting this motion. A few weeks ago, Councillor Brunton and I were in that facility, and I can see where the desks have a problem, as probably 8 to 10 staff members were sitting on top of them, having a grand old time. Maybe they need beds instead of $20,000 desks, Mr. Mayor, but there wasn't much work going on. They certainly don't need the improved facilities.
Motion to defer. Councillor Brunton. Any other discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor of deferring 1 year? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those opposed? That motion is carried. I'm going to call about a 10 or so minute break before we depart for the break. Gentlemen, how long do you wish to go today? I'm open for suggestions. Pardon? Let's have a show of hands for 4 o'clock. That would support going to 4 o'clock. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I know you're leaving at 3:30. We'll be back in, I'll call you back 10 minutes or so, and we will go to 4 o'clock today. Thank you. It's time to get back to work, folks. If you can find your seat, we'll continue and wrap this up at 4 o'clock for today. I will ask one more time if there's anything on parks, facilities, and recreations, 2.8 and the very top of 2.9. Hearing none, I would like then to move to fire and rescue services, emergency medical services. I'd like to do those next, and I'll include marinas as well as part of community services, because that's what it is. So, fire and rescue, EMS, and marinas, please. Councillor Wells first.
This thing. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, might I ask a question about item number 7431805 for $147,000?
Middle of page 29, yes, the
What's that word, extradition?
extrication equipment.
That's it?
Yeah, the print is small and I'm having difficulty. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's the one I want.
Through the chair, is there a question or just an
I'm
explanation?
not sure.
Yeah, there is a question. The question is,
I'm sorry.
you've got it here for $147,000. What are we getting for $147,000?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the $147,000 is our extrication equipment that we've been replacing starting in 2017. And one thing I'd like to share with council is we've identified the spreader, the RAM, and some adapters of approximately $33,000, which we per station. And what I'm going to ask council is we've got some money in the 2017 that we started the program. We're looking at 3 stations over the next 3 years. And what I'd like to ask council is if we could defer $47,000 of that to year 2020 on the final year, that allows us to buy the 3 pieces of equipment for the 3 stations this year, for 2018, plus 2017 will give us 4 stations. We can do an evaluation of our equipment to see that we're moving in the right direction. So it's for the extrication equipment that we'll be replacing over the 11 stations. I'm just asking council to defer $47,000 of that to the final year in 2020.
Continue.
Okay. And thank you for that explanation. We'll deal with your request later. What pieces of equipment are we getting? That's really my question.
What you're going to get for the pieces of equipment is a spreader.
What is a spreader?
A spreader. In auto extrication, if we come upon an entrapment, what you'll see the firefighters doing is we need to remove a door. So we'll start with a purchase point, use our spreaders, and that will gradually dig in deeper and open up our doors so we can get access to the entrapment. The rams, we can use our rams for if there's an entrapment that the patient is under a dash. We could use the ram to increase from the floor to the dash, that we can increase the space that we can remove the patient. And the various adapters that go with that are the pieces that we add onto our equipment to make it smaller, make it longer. So it's predominantly used for our auto extrication component.
And each fire truck would have this equipment on it?
Each station, not each
station.
equipment, each station would have, then we move into the same pieces of equipment.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sonnenberg.
Thank you. Fire alarm systems in the stations. What could possibly go wrong or wear out with fire alarms in a fire hall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if council recalls a couple of years ago, we were looking at a swipe card entry type access system moving into a burglar alarm system. And what we're asking council is a fire alarm system. Now, the fire alarm system would not be the pull alarm. It would be heat detectors in our bay area and smoke detectors in our office areas in the fire stations. We have millions of dollars on our stations in apparatus and equipment, and if we have some type of alarming system that would go through a monitoring company, we'd be notified. Right now, there is no protection in our fire stations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Donald, I
Councillor
guess.
Brunton?
Thank you, Mayor Luke, through you to the chief. Pump 11, Victoria Fire Hall, 675,000. It's a truck replacement?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. That would be along our 20-year truck replacement. Pump 11 is up next year, as well as our dry hydrant recertifications for our stations 10 and 11, which you would use. And one of the things last year, Mr. Mayor, that the treasurer offered is because we're getting beat up a little bit on the U.S. exchange, to deal with the treasurer this year before the tender went out, there's a possibility of maybe looking at different ways that we conduct the Canadian versus the U.S. dollar to build into our tender this year.
So this would be a U.S. product?
What happens is the cabs and chassis right now are U.S., right? And the pump components are U.S. and the lighting, yeah, predominantly it's U.S. based.
So does this include the exchange?
That would include the exchange. There's maybe an opportunity of how we present it in the document that the treasurer can help us out.
Okay, thank you.
We'll stay with the fire and rescue at the moment since the fire chief is at the microphone. Councillor Sonnenberg?
No, something else?
Okay, I'll see if we can finish this and we'll go to EMS. Just anything else on fire and rescue? Councillor Black, I had you down. Thank you.
Did I hear the chief say he's willing to give up 47,000 out of the extrication equipment line?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what I asked council to do is to defer the 47,000 to the year 2020 in our last year. Gives us a couple of years to evaluate the product that we're getting.
Well, thank you for that, chief. I would make that a motion just to defer the 47 to the next year.
2020?
2020, absolutely, yeah, in our last year.
Could I get a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sonnenberg has seconded that. Discussion on that. If not, those in favor? That's carried to defer 47 of that 147. Anything else on the fire and rescue, please? Thank you, Chief. I would like to go to emergency medical services at this point, and we'll start with Councillor Sonnenberg.
Thank you. First line, what is a disaster unit
Well,
for $90,000?
we're going to find out in a moment when Sarah gets to the microphone. The question is from Councillor Sonnenberg, what is a disaster unit?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Emergency Support Unit or Disaster Unit is one of our emergency response vehicles that the commanders drive. Currently, it is a suburban large-scale vehicle. The reason for that is twofold. It is the only vehicle that we can tow our rapid access vehicle with. It has the correct payload in order to do that. And the second portion is it carries additional equipment for any mass scene that has more than 2 patients. All ambulances in Norfolk County carry enough patient equipment for 2 patients on scene. This allows us to respond a supervisor to a major accident or incident and have additional equipment available for the paramedics.
Have we always called them disaster units, or did they go by another name?
In general, in the EMS field, it goes by ESU, which is Emergency Support Unit.
Okay, thank you.
Just before I go to Councillor Wells and Brunton, Mr. Cridlin, could you put this item, the disaster unit, up on our screen? Are you capable of doing that, or would finance do it? I'd just like to have a look at it.
Yeah, I believe our finance folks are connected
Kathy, you're
there.
able to put that up? There's no rush. I just want to have a look at it. Councillor Wells and then Brunton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, just with regard to the last item there, stretcher replacement program, $135,000. Could we have a little explanation what that is or whatever?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is continuing on with our replacement of stretchers into the electronic stretchers. So that will replace 2 full vehicles next year. As we purchase the new vehicles, we'll put them in there. And then 1 spare stretcher so that we have 1 if something needs to go out for maintenance or repair.
now finished with these purchase of these stretchers? Are we, or not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, it's actually a 4-year program that we will be replacing all 11 of them. So we've done 6 this year, they're in place, and 2 next year, and then ongoing from there.
Does the ministry pay for half of this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I may refer that to finance, but it does cover amortization of capital assets is the way I understand it at this point, to a maximum of 50%.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Townsend's correct. When it comes to capital, we pay for it up front, and then when we amortize it over the useful life of the asset, we expense that every year, and then that's when we get 50% of that expense.
Councillor Brunton, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I was looking on the screen here, and that's a 2008 vehicle, this disaster unit, it's called. Do you know what the mileage is on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, all our ambulances are currently on a 7-year replacement cycle, whereas our emergency response vehicles are on a 10-year. So it is the 10-year replacement of it. I believe the mileage is roughly 295,000 right now. The bigger problem we're having is the frame and body rust and kind of malfunction at this point.
Have you had a lot of use in that vehicle?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in addition to being an emergency support unit or disaster unit, it is part of our regular fleet as a supervisor vehicle, so they are using it for call response, administrative duties, things like that, so it is driven almost every day.
And that a supervisor drives that, do they?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Just a question I have after reading the screen here. Currently, the 08 unit is an SUV, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's 1040. It
And
is
the
a
new one
Suburban.
that we're proposing here to replace that vehicle with is not an SUV.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the normal replacement of an ESU would be a large-scale vehicle, so it will be some sort of large SUV. It depends on what is available. It could be a pickup truck, it could be a Suburban, it could be an
So-
Expedition Max.
Thank you. When I read this, it said it includes the vehicle purchase of 80,000 and a conversion of 10,000. Am I envisioning a large SUV that I could go buy on a lot for $80,000? Like, I understand the 10,000 for converting it for an emergency vehicle. What are we getting for 80,000? I mean, you can get a lot of SUV for 50,000. Why is it 80,000?
Mr. Mayor, so basically, without getting too much into the mechanical stuff, which is definitely not my specialty, it does have to have a higher payload and weight ratio in order to do the towing and carry all the equipment that we needed to carry. So it's my understanding that it has to be like a Super Duty vehicle, something like that. We are exploring different options of moving it into like more of a pickup truck style with a modified box on the back and exploring other options to see what's out there currently.
I'm not convinced that that purchase before conversion needs to be $80,000. Now, I know trucks are expensive, and I know SUVs are, and then I'm not, okay, thank you. Any other speakers on EMS? Thank you, Sarah. Marinas? Anything else to finish up community services before we go to Chris Baird? Okay, thank you, Mr. Cridland, you and your staff. Development and Cultural Services, partway down 2-10. Let's look at the balance of 210 to get started before we flip the page. There's also a little bit on top of page 211 over the page. Anything on those items? I'll give you a few moments to have a look. Councillor Height?
Mr. Mayor, I missed it on 210. It says gateway signage, 50 grand. Could, what town's that going in?
Through the mayor, Councillor Height, the 50,000 includes $30,000 to replace our boundary road signs. Those are the Norfolk signs. They were originally installed in 2001, and they're starting to fall apart. So it's a program to each of the county road entry points. We're going to be replacing those Norfolk County signs. The remaining 20 is split 10,000 for Port Rowan gateway signs, Phase 2, and 10,000 for Simcoe Phase 2. That's Highway 24 South coming in to the community. The sign that's there is completely rusted and falling apart. That's the 50,000 total.
Okay, is that going to be able to complete the Simcoe sign and the Port Rowan sign, or no?
Yes, it will complete Port Rowan and Simcoe as well. We've got the north gateway that we're working on now, and this would do the south, so we'll be fine.
So coming southbound on Highway 24, there's going to be a sign that actually says Simcoe that's bigger than the blotter on my desk?
Yeah, that was approved in last year's budget. It's being worked on now. It would be up near the Davis Street, that entry point there.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brunton?
Well, that was my question, Mayor Luke. I wondered, like, I thought that was passed last year, and that will be going, like, what kind of sign will it be, Chris? Like, I'm wondering, I've seen the Delhi sign, and I think, isn't there one in Dover?
Through the mayor, there are 3 in Dover, each of the gateways, Highway 6 east and west, and the Cockshot Road southbound.
Is that what we're looking at?
Something like that, correct.
And is it going to be kind of on the banks there when you come in?
Yeah, through the mayor, it will be on the bank, so it's a little bit of a challenge. We did have a retirement on staff, so the project did get slightly delayed, but it's being worked on. And being a capital project, it may well be installed in the new year, but the base may go in this fall.
Okay, and while we're on that, I hope Mr. Cridland is looking into the I call it the underpass, overpass banks there, that they're somewhat improved before the signs, or when the signs go up, because I mentioned to him, and he's well aware that when Dufferin did that job, they used granular A for topsoil on those banks, and it certainly does not look good if you drive by there. It's nothing but gravel, and I know he's working on that to see if we can get some help to improve the appearance up there. It's horrible for a new job. It's horrible if you look at it. So, anyways, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Height?
Sorry, Mayor Luke, the sign on that overpass that was filled, that's not getting done though, correct?
There's no sign in that underpass location that I'm aware of, Councillor Height.
No, I know, there isn't one.
No, but it has been budgeted for in the 2017 capital budget. That project is being worked on as we speak.
And how much is in that budget?
I believe the amount for that sign is about $12,000.
Oh, so it's not going to be a very nice sign then? Right?
It'll be pretty nice. $12,000 isn't anything to laugh at. We're also looking, there are contributions from local service clubs as well, and that helps to offset the cost. And that's what we've been working on with Port Rowan, all the previous communities. There's always some local contribution to those gateways.
Thank you. Councillor Geisens?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm under Community Planning Services, GIS plotter scanner replacement. My question is, can we get through for another year without spending it this year?
Through the mayor, that's a good question. We actually looked at perhaps pushing it back. It was pushed back last year. It's now completely unreliable, and we use that to do all our large plots. So it is a plotter, but it also is a scanner. So we're getting in all sorts of large format plans that are scanned down into PDF and kept digital. So it's a critical piece of hardware that we have already. It's just reached the end of its useful life. We've had that for about 10 years at this point, and its useful life, they say, is six to seven. It's had repairs, and we can't do anything more with it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on development and cultural services? Hearing none, that is the end of our first section 2A, the replacement of capital assets. I would like now, if we will, please, to go to replacements with enhancements. Tab 2B, I'm on page 2-12, pardon me. And we now have employee business services. Any question on the top there, which is EBS? Councillor Geisens and then Wells.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. I would recommend that we take the $70,000 out and either move it up for another year or a couple of years. I don't see a whole lot wrong here. And to me, I'm going to make a motion that we take it out.
Take it out or defer?
Take it out.
Take it out. A motion to take this $70,000 out for council chamber renovations. Just a second, I'll see if I got a seconder. Is there a seconder, Councillor Wells? Just before I get to you, Councillor Wells, do you wish to speak to this?
Certainly,
Clerk?
Mr. Mayor. One of the things I was going to recommend was that we defer this for 1 year. Because next year there's a number of factors, one being the election that we're quite busy, and another, I certainly don't want to risk these chambers being under renovation and us not being able to televise council proceedings in the months leading up to an election, because it's a very important time for our community to see what's going on here in these chambers, and that would be a real potential if we did do the work next year. The other thing, though, that you might want to consider is that one thing that this project's been delayed a number of times, so it is very required. These carpets aren't going to last another few years. They're already half coming up when the people come in to vacuum them, and there's all sorts of work required here. But the one thing you might want to consider is that there's the accessible podium that isn't part of this budget, but has been something in previous years. So it can be done outside of this, and I know council members have said, when are we going to have that accessible podium done? So I'd suggest you take this $70,000 out, but you might consider putting some in for an accessible podium for next year, because it need not be tied to the capital renovations if you don't want to. Previously, they have done that, but if that assists at all, I was going to offer it up to be removed.
The question is, how much is a podium that will go up and down, I guess, is what you're talking about? For oh, here we go.
Through the mayor, the accessible podium is included in the budget document, page 2-14. This was an item that has been budgeted several times and deferred as well. The estimated amount is $5,000, and the intent of the podium is so it can lower and raise itself for the need of the individual presenting a deputation to council.
So it has its own section?
That's correct. It's a new initiative, so it's under section 2-14 is the page number, first item.
So the $70,000, if we move it or push it forward for another year, we're not going to take that away then? Okay, that's what I need. I will withdraw my motion of before that we, instead, that we put it forward for 2019.
So you're saying your motion isn't for removal, it's defer until 2019, the 70,000?
That's what I'm doing. Thank you.
Thank you, and are you okay with that, sir? The motion, the mover and seconder are both in agreement. Any further discussion, Councillor Height, on this item, on this motion, on this $70,000 item? Okay, Councillor Black, to the motion?
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, will we see a plan? Like, Andy, I guess through you to Andy, does this $70,000 include redoing these desks or mayor's dais where you guys are, or new configuration for the seating, or what would it include? And would we see a plan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do think that there's going to have to be some broader dialogue before with council before that plan is developed. One of the things that's occurring right now is that we're entering a period where council will have an option to consider electronic voting. So how we're going to integrate the technology if council decides to be able to vote without you being in attendance here, you won't count for quorum, but that is part of the changes coming in for the Municipal Act. Now, the City of Toronto has had that ability for the last 11 years and hasn't chosen to enact it. I wouldn't say that starting next year we're the first council to enact it, but one of the things that we want to do over next year is kind of watch what other municipalities are going to do and see what is capable here in terms of technology. So currently some of the provisions that we're looking at really is we definitely need to remove the steps behind SLT because their chairs are very uncomfortable. They aren't uncomfortable because of the questions you're asking them always. Sometimes it's just the chairs. So we got to fix that definitely. And the carpets, they are coming apart, so we need to replace the carpeting. And there's just some minor veneer issues, but really the big thing will be discussing with council what type of technology and interfaces we want to have in this room.
Well, so you're suggesting that councilors won't have to show up to the meetings now?
We'll always need 5 of you.
Oh, okay.
And I
Yes.
expect the local Simcoe ones to definitely come down.
Yeah, so the rest of them can just stay at home and vote from home.
That is the way it's going to change. However, they can't go into closed session.
Okay, thanks.
Any further discussion on the motion? Motion to defer for 1 year, reconsider in a year. Those in favor? Carried, thank you. Public Works and Environmental Services is next. I will suggest we... Yes, thank you. Page 2-12, Councillor Height.
Mayor Luke,
Thanks,
the
Chief.
traffic control program, it's a ranking number 2. That means it's a wish item. So I'll move the motion that we delete that. Not defer, delete.
That's in the middle of the page right under
Traffic
road
controller program.
operations. $50,000, correct?
Yep,
Your motion is to delete that?
correct.
I have a seconder for that. If you wish to get clarification, I will take your direction. Lee, some clarification before we get asked for a seconder.
Through the mayor to council, all of our traffic signals in Norfolk County are controlled by traffic controllers. That's the brains that make the traffic signals work. They need to be replaced. They have an average life expectancy of about 10 to 12, maybe 15 years. Based on the number of signals that we have recommended replacement of pushing the life expectancy of the traffic controllers and replacing one on an annual basis. It shows up under the replacement with an enhanced